Okay, so to start word problems, it's super important to be able to look at a function and then tell what's actually happening, okay? So if you look at this graph right here, to be able to tell what's actually happening without any actual story behind it, you got to read the labels, right? So this is talking about water in a tank, right? And then you're looking at your variables. So it's the time versus the depth of the water in feet, right? So what's happening to the water in this tank? It's decreasing, right? They are either emptying the tank on purpose or there's a leak in it, right? So hopefully they're doing it on purpose and it's not a leak. But if it was a leak, and you would need to know that, right? Because if this is a tank that has animals, fish in it, you don't want them all to die. You need to repair that. Okay? And so when it asks you something like that, like what is actually happening in this situation, you can look at that and say the water is you can say being let out, because we don't know if it's leaking or if they're doing it on purpose. A tank. And it doesn't really even tell you what kind of tank it is, but the depth of the water in feet, right? It's starting at how much water is in the tank to begin with. How much, Connor?
4 feet.
It is not 4 feet to begin with. Anybody else? What would you think that how much is water is in the tank before it starts leaking out? Gozma. It's got to be 5. Look, this is right here. This is where it starts, okay? So this is where it starts. And that is our y-intercept. So wherever that starts on the y line, that's our starting amount, okay? And so in that situation, right now, we can answer this question. What does the y-intercept actually mean? It means, so I should maybe write this down. The y-intercept means the amount of water in the tank to start, right? And I know I'm kind of jumping around here, but like as we're doing the question, it kind of all flows together. All right. The other thing we need to write a linear function is the slope, okay? And so how do we find slope from a graph again? This is from last week and from last semester. What do we do? Try this time, Connor. Slope is, that's right. So to find the slope, we're trying to find the rise over run. Okay, and this is super important to know the value of each square when you do rise over run. So going up and down, right? Are we going by ones? And some people get confused. We're actually not going by ones. Each square is actually worth half, right? Because 2 squares is worth 1. So this is half. 1, 1.5, 2. So it's super important to know that. Going left to right, right? So noon. And then are we going by ones here, or are we going by half hours? Half, actually, aren't we? So when we do rise over run, I can use this point right here, that 5. And then I need to follow this down to another spot that has 4 corners. Here we go, right here. So in this case, my rise is going down, but it is not worth 1. It's worth half. Yeah, it's worth, and you can write that as negative 0.5 over, and when I go over, it's not worth 2. How much is it worth? 1, right? Because we said we're going by half, so this would be half and then 1. It's worth 1 hour, right? And I know it's 1 hour because it's time. So what this means is it's negative 0.5 is going with feet. That's what that means, right? It tells you this is measured in feet. The rise is measured in feet. And then this is saying per 1 hour. Okay, so if I divide that, dividing by 1, we know is going to give us the same thing. This is saying our rate or our slope is negative 0.5 feet per hour. That's what that means. So our function is this. Y equals what? Write the function, write the equation for that function. Somebody who hasn't answered yet. I've got both of my pieces of information. Ashanti, go.
Y equals negative 1.5x.
How about negative 0.5x?
Oh, yeah. Plus 5.
Perfect. This is the linear function or the equation. And so we already said the y-intercept means the amount of the water in the tank to start. What is the slope telling us here? What is that telling us? Kind of the time, but it's telling us what? What's happening here? Yeah, how much? It's telling us the rate that the water is flowing out, right?
It's like a few gallons.
So eventually, right, if they don't stop, if this is a leak, if they don't stop the leak, is it going to eventually run out?
Yes.
Yeah, it will, but not at 5 p.m. You can figure that out if we were to keep on going, right? So the way you figure something like that out, how many hours, you substitute that in for X, right? So this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours. How many hours do you think it would take for it to be all the way out?
10.
Let's try it. So what you would do is say y equals negative 0.5 times 10 for hours plus 5. And we would try that out. We're going to use our calculator and do this. Negative 0.5 times 10 plus 5. Negative 0.5 times 10 plus 5. What do we get? 0. So that's exactly right. This is telling us it takes 10 hours to be empty.
Oh, you can just keep reviewing.
You can. Or you might, want to patch. If it is a leak, you're going to want to patch that leak, right? Okay. And so this is why we learn this. There is so many different reasons why that might be important. And it doesn't tell us what kind of tank it is, but if it's a tank that's holding life in an aquarium, right? You want to get to it before 10 hours because everybody's going to get dried up. Okay. All right. Now, what I want to do is I want to flip. So we're going to staple this to our assignment today. This is the assignment today that says word problems on it. Okay. And we've got 2 parts to it. So the one side says additional practice. This is just like what we just did. Okay. But what I want to do is help for the video purpose with a word problem or 2, just so that if someone's not here, they can know what this side is. Because I already gave us an example of this. All right. Let's look at this. So word problems. Suppose that the water level of a river is 34 feet. And as we do this, it is helpful to kind of underline or circle important information. And that it's receding. Oh, receding means, is it going up or down? Down. At a rate of 0.5 foot per day. Write an equation. We need to write an equation of the water level L after D days In how many days will the water level be 26 feet? Okay, so couple of things. We're used to using X and Y. So we're going to do that first. We're going to say Y equals. And then the first thing we need is the slope. Which one of these numbers is the slope? Which one does it have to be? Someone who hasn't answered yet. You've already had a chance. Somebody go. Ashanti's had a chance too. Go ahead, Aisha. It is not 34, which means it has to be what? And what gives that away? What word? Somebody just said it. The rate, okay? The rate and slope are the same thing. Also, the word per, right, means it's a rate. So now, is it positive 0.5 or negative if it is receding?
Negative.
There we go. And next to every rate, we put an X. And then we put our y-intercept, or our starting amount, which has to be what?
34.
34, positive 34. This is technically a correct answer. But in this case, right, it tells us the variables it wants us to use instead of X and Y. So it says the water level, so we're going to use L here, equals negative 0.5. And instead of X, what does it want us to use? D for days. Plus 34. This is the only difference if it tells you that it wants to use different letters. You can use whatever letters you want. Now, that's how you do the equation. And then the second part of these story problems is it then gives you a number to see what happens. So it says, in how many days will the water level be 26 feet? So it gives us the level of 26. So are we going to put 26 in for L or D? L. Let's rewrite it. 26 equals negative 0.5 D plus 34. Okay. This is a throwback. Who remembers how to solve that equation?
Oh. Is it like a
Solving it. We did this in quarter 1. Crystal, what happens first? Subtract 34. Remember, we're going to undo these, okay? So we're going to subtract 34 and then subtract it over here. We're going to get a negative number here, so you're going to want to check this. 26 minus 34 equals how much? Go ahead, Aisha.
Negative 8.
Negative 8 equals negative 0.5 D. What was the last step? What? Divide. Divide by negative 0.5 here. Sorry, it's going into the letters here. Negative 8 divided by negative 0.5 should give us our answer. Negative 8 divided by negative 0.5 is 16 days. So this is why we do this. This tells us if a river's at 34 feet and it is receding at a rate of 0.5 feet a day, it will take 16 days for it to be at 26 feet, right? And be down there. And so we want to know that because we might have boats and stuff that are going to need that depth, right? And we need to do something about it. Okay, that's it for my video today.